So, welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I started an eco-conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, at Oxford Clay, I don't just make pottery, I also make resources such as books and courses and information for other potters who want to be more eco-conscious in their pottery practice but maybe don't know where to start or can't find out the information they need. So that's what this podcast is all about. It's about sharing everything I've learned along my eco-conscious pottery journey with you, and I can't wait to get started. So let's go. Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast series on creating eco-conscious pottery colour without using commercial metal oxides. So, if you missed the other episodes in this series, for September, I'm basically doing a 5 episode series on creating colour in pottery using eco-conscious like materials, so like recycled metals, glass, renewable materials, different ways of creating color without using commercial metal oxides. So that's what this special 5 part series is all about, and that's what the book Eco-conscious Pottery Color is all about. So there's 4 ways in that book creating color without using commercial metal oxides. And episode 1 of this series, I spoke about commercial metal oxides and some issues associated with them. And then in episode 2 of the series, I spoke about how, as potters, we can create metal oxides from recycled metals. So recycling copper and iron into oxides that we can use in glazes to create like amazing colors in our pottery. And then in episode 3, I spoke about glass and how glass can be used like decoratively in pottery, and yeah, to beautiful effect. We can basically reuse the metal oxides already in glass. So yeah, I spoke about that and like the technique that I use to recycle glass in my own pottery. And yeah, that technique obviously is in Eco-conscious Pottery Color, the book. Yeah, so if you want a copy of the book, there is a copy, there's a PDF copy, ebook copy on the Oxford Clay website. And if you want a paper copy, you can get a paper copy on Amazon. The link will be in the show notes to how to get the book. Yeah, right. Okay, so in today's episode, we're on episode 4. And episode 4, right, we're going to be talking about plant ashes and using plant ashes in pottery. Now, I've spoken about plant ashes like so much in pottery. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm going to try and keep this episode succinct because I literally could talk about plant ash glazing like all day long. So yeah, like a note to self, try to keep it succinct. But essentially, the concept here is that plants, as they grow, each plant growing in each individual type of soil will grow in such a way as to have like metal oxides, traces of metal oxides in their tissues. And as they grow, they retain these metal oxides in their tissues, or they'll put them into their leaves so that when their leaves fall, say like naturally, those leaves will have trace metals in them. And what we can do as potters is we can take this plant material. So I've got really into using like the materials that plants no longer need. So that, that's say like that tree in autumn, it's shedding the leaves, and we can take these leaves that the plant is like no longer needs as part of its growing cycle, and we can burn these and make them into an ash. And then we can use this ash in pottery, in a pottery glaze. We can make a pottery glaze from plant ashes, and it will add color naturally. So the colors we're talking about here are like they're quite gentle colors. So we're not going to get like, the kind of the very dark blues that we get with like, recycling glass in pottery, or by using verdigris in a pottery glaze. We're not gonna that was me just chinking water, nearly breaking some pottery. So we're not going to get those colors from plant ashes, but we get these like absolutely beautiful, gentle, like earthy colors. We can get sort of like browns, creams, yellows, light, sort of very light greens. Yeah, so it's a really beautiful way to get to add a real like subtle color to pottery. So yeah, okay, so that's the basic concept. Like I said, I'm trying to keep it short. Don't go off on a tangent. Right. So why use plant ashes to color pottery? Let me tell you. Let me tell you some reasons. So, hey, the first one is that, like I just touched on, each individual plant growing in each individual place, depending on the soil conditions it's growing in, depending on the kind of meteorological conditions it's been growing in, depending on the species of plant. Each plant has like a unique composition of metals, trace metals in its tissues. So this is so amazing because it means that like the glazes you can create as a potter using plant ashes are so unique. They could be like totally unique to your pottery. So yeah, it's amazing, and you can create like absolutely beautiful glazes with plant ashes. Um, Okay, the second reason is that plants, particularly like fallen leaves, like I was saying, I love using fallen leaves in to make ash, to make pottery glazes from. And I've I've actually written a whole book about it. So if that's something you're listening to, you think, oh, that sounds really interesting. There's a whole book on that I've written that's available from the Oxoclay website and also Amazon as well. If you wanted to learn more about creating pottery glazes just from leaves that plants naturally shed, there's a whole book that I've written about it and like how to do it and loads of examples of different plants and their leaves and what kind of glazes they look like. And yeah, so leaves are like abundant. They're not in the kind of like global supply chains. They're like locally sourced. They're like a pottery ingredient that is like near to us, within our control. We can use it, we can create it ourselves. Yeah, it's fantastic. So okay, the next reason is that plant ashes work really, really well with other eco-conscious colorants. So they work particularly well. So basically, plant ashes contain natural fluxes, and fluxes like help a glaze to melt, and they also really works so well with metal oxides. Like I said, in episode 2, we talked about like verdigris and rust, and plant ashes work so well with these colorants. They just like, because of the natural fluxes, they mix those colors really into like the body of the glaze. So they can yeah, they just can they really like color the glaze really evenly and make like absolutely beautiful, beautiful glazes. You can also add, we're going to be talking in the next episode about clay, using clay to colour pottery glazes. And you can actually mix like plant ashes and like an oxide that you've made yourself from copper, so like verdigris. So you can mix like ashes, verdigris, and clay together. And that's what some of the recipes in Eco-conscious Pottery Colour, some of the recipes in this book use all three of those in the recipe, and they like just create like incredible glaze effects, really, really beautiful, unique colours that you're not really going to be able to make, any other way. So yeah, they work really, really well with those other eco-conscious colorants. Okay, so the next reason, and this is my favorite reason, is that plant using ashes in a glaze. So glazes normally are made from non-renewable materials. So these materials are like mined from the earth. We spoke about this in episode 1 of this podcast series on creating eco-conscious pottery color, that like a lot of the materials, metal oxides, they're non-renewable. They're extracted from the earth, they've taken millions of years to form. And many of the ingredients used in pottery glazes are the same. They're rocks, they could be clays. They've taken millions of years to form, and then we're extracting them from the earth, and then they're gone basically. But plant ashes are a renewable source of a glaze making material. So the recipe that I use actually in the book about glazing with plant ashes, I've done 2 books actually about that, one with leaves and one just kind of with general plant material. The recipe that I've used and also the recipe that I use in this book, in Eco-conscious Pottery Colour, one of the recipes uses 40% plant ash as as part of the glaze recipe. So 40% of that glaze recipe is from a renewable source. So especially if we're using, plant parts of the plant which are it's naturally shedding, like the leaves, that's incredible. That's an incredibly high percentage of a glaze to be able to use that's a renewable resource, renewable material. So I love that reason. And, yeah, and then, like, the kind of link to that reason is the next reason, which is the last reason, which is basically just that helps to reduce mining, basically. So we're using renewable we're using a renewable resource, and we're reduce them that effectively reduces the raw materials that need mining from the earth, so conserving those raw materials. Um, okay, so I'm going to just briefly tell you how to process an ash into a glaze. And then if you want some really cool like recipes, like I said, about like which use like plant ash and eco-conscious colorants, or you want to see some really nicely colored like glazes made just with plant ashes and no other colorants, just holding up a photograph from the book actually, which is like rhubarb leaf, which gives this really, really beautiful kind of bluey, whitey, sort of light blue coloured glaze. It's like almost like an iridescent blue glaze. You can find those recipes in Eco-conscious Pottery Colour. Okay, so essentially, once you've got your plant material, you dry it, you burn it, and there's tips in the book about how to burn in a safe way. Minimizing the impact on the environment because obviously when we're burning we're creating like particulates, and there's some advice in the book about how to reduce the environmental impact of like burning plant material. And so we're burning it into an ash. What the next step is to sieve the ash. So I use like 100 mesh size sieve because I want it to be like the ash to be very, very fine. At this point I'm wearing an FFP3 face mask to protect my lungs. Ash is caustic as well, so you don't want it touching your skin, you don't want it touching your eyes. Once it's sieved, then it's the perfect kind of ingredient then to use in a glaze. So then it can be used like any other glaze making material. And like I said, the recipes are in the book, 80 recipes in Eco-conscious Pottery Colour if you want some recipes. Um, yeah, so then it's just mixed in like as a normal ingredient. It's weighed out, and then the parts, I do all the parts by weight. So for example, that glaze, which is like 40%, 40 parts plant ash. If I was making like a test of like 100 grams, it would just be 40 grams of the ash. So just weigh it out on scales and then mix it in. And ash glazes can sometimes like to be a little tiny bit thicker than other glazes. So you can experiment with that. Making them a bit thicker, making them a bit thinner. Yeah, I found they work really, really well, especially the color aspect works really well if they're a little bit thicker. And then they're just fired up to stoneware. And generally, ash glazes are fired up to stoneware temperatures because that temperature is required, high temperatures are required to melt the ash into a glaze. Yeah, okay. So I think, yeah, that's like everything. I should stop there, stop there and stop talking about like ash glazing and creating eco-conscious color using plant ashes. But yeah, it's been so nice talking to you about it. And yeah, so the next episode, episode 5, episode 5, we're going to be talking about using clay. So that's the next episode, using clay, so just naturally from the earth, using that clay in pottery glazes and colouring pottery glazes with clay. So yeah, so join me for that episode. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode on creating colour in pottery using plant ashes. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. And until then, wishing you very happy potting, and I'll see you then. Okay, goodbye. Oh, yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you're interested to learn more about eco conscious pottery or making your pottery more eco conscious and sustainable, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website, which is www.oxfordclay.co.uk. I can't wait to see you there.